Wake up, Commander Nation. Do you think Adam Peters forgives failures? The young QB who sank the preseason with 5 turnovers is out. Is it a mistake or a master move to hide him on the practice squad? This is just the beginning. And it's not. The worst. A cornerback who saved the defense in 2024 could be traded today. His numbers, 8 PDEF. 2 int, but Peters plays chess. Betrayal or trap for rivals. Beyond, the purge on the D-line has begun. 2 veterans cut. The energy is clear. Perform or perish. But wait, the WR market is blazing. A former Jet with 8.3 yak reception and a 6'3" red zone monster. Will Peters sign them before others? Rivals are already gossiping. If you don't subscribe now, you'll fall behind. This could define the Daniels era. Look, I'm not going to lie to you. When I saw Sam Hartman got cut, my first reaction was, this was inevitable. But here's what really has me thinking, and it's something you Commanders fans need to fully understand. Hartman had a disastrous preseason. We're talking about 49 pass attempts, only 26 completions, 4 interceptions, and 0 touchdowns. 0. I'm telling you, those numbers don't lie. And Adam Peters isn't swayed by feelings when it comes to building a winning roster. But let's dive into these numbers because you need to grasp the magnitude of how bad Hartman was. According to Pro Football Focus, this guy had a completion percentage of only 53.1, which is terrible for a professional quarterback. And I'm not talking about difficult passes. We're talking basic passes any NFL quarterback should complete. In the first game against the Patriots, Hartman finished with a decent passer rating of 70.3, which gave us hope. We all thought, well, this kid might develop. Wrong. The next 2 games were an absolute disaster. His ratings fell below 40 in weeks 2 and 3. Below 40. For you to understand the gravity of this, a rating below 40 means just about anyone in the stands could have done a better job. But here's what really bothers me about this whole situation. Not only did Hartman throw 4 interceptions, but he also fumbled once in the final game against Baltimore. We're talking about 5 turnovers in just 3 preseason games. That's a turnover every 9.8 pass attempts. It's statistically impossible to succeed with those numbers. And you know what hurts me the most about all this? Hartman had been working all of last year to reach this moment. When he got to Washington late in the 2024 season, we all knew he was a long-term project. A Wake Forest guy with potential but needed development. And the organization invested time in him. Dan Quinn and his staff worked with Hartman throughout last season. They put him on the practice squad, developed him, and gave him a real opportunity to compete for the backup spot this year. And when the time came to prove himself, he simply didn't deliver. But wait, because here comes the interesting part. Brian Mitchell and Chick Hernandez are already speculating that Hartman will return to the practice squad. And do you know why? Because, despite his awful numbers, this guy has a special connection with Jaden Daniels. He's been a super positive influence in the quarterback room. I spoke with sources close to the team during training camp, and they told me Hartman and Daniels developed an incredible chemistry working together. Hartman, being just a year older, could relate to Daniels in a way Marcus Mariota would all. His experience couldn't. They were constantly studying film together, practicing timing on routes, and Hartman was like an older brother to our rookie quarterback. Even more, during training camp practices, Hartman showed glimpses of the quarterback he could have been. He had a strong arm, good pocket mobility, and understood Cliff Kingsbury's offensive concepts. The problem was when real games came, even preseason, everything fell apart. And here's something you don't know. Dan Quinn specifically requested to keep Hartman until the end of the cut process because he wanted to give him every possible chance to show improvement. Quinn saw something in Hartman last year that made him believe in his potential. But when that final game against Baltimore came in, Hartman had 3 turnovers, including that devastating fumble. Quinn had no choice but to approve the cut. Now I ask you this. Do you think Peters cut Hartman just because of his preseason numbers, or is there something bigger here? I believe Peters is sending a clear message. In this organization, performance is all that matters. It doesn't matter if you're the backup quarterback or have good chemistry with the starter. If you don't produce, you're out. But I also think there's a strategy here. By cutting Hartman now, Peters can try to pass him through waivers, and if no one claims him, he can automatically sign him to the practice squad. It's a calculated move because Hartman doesn't have enough real game tape for other teams to risk claiming him off waivers. But do you think this means Marcus Mariota will be our only backup? Because I'm telling you, if Hartman returns to the practice squad, Peters already has his plan B ready. And that, my friends, is what makes an elite general manager. The reality is that with Jaden Daniels as our starter, we need a backup who can keep the ship afloat if something happens. Mariota has the experience and knowledge to do that. Hartman, as much potential as he has, showed he's not ready for that responsibility yet. If Hartman surprised you, wait until you hear this. Diana Rossini reported that the Commanders are exploring the market to trade Noah Igbinoghene. And when I read this, I can't believe what I'm seeing. But before you start thinking Peters has gone crazy, let me tell you the whole story of Noah Igbinoghene, because you need to understand why this move is both surprising and risky. Look, this guy had a solid season in 2024. Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. brought him from Dallas after working with him, and everything finally seemed to be clicking. First round by Miami in 2020, pick number 30. Never lived up to expectations there. But here in Washington, he started showing the potential that justified his selection. Let's talk real numbers here. In 2024, Igbinoghene played in 15 games for the Commanders, starting 8 of them. He had 47 tackles, 8 passes defended, and 2 interceptions. But those numbers don't tell the whole story. What really impressed Quinn and his staff was the week-to-week improvement Igbinoghene showed. When he arrived from Dallas, Igbinoghene was basically a project. The Cowboys had signed him as a free agent after Miami cut him, but they never gave him a real chance to develop. In Dallas, he was mainly on special teams and as depth cornerback. But Quinn saw something different. During the 2024 training camp, Quinn put Igbinoghene in one-on-one situations against receivers like Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson constantly. And you know what? The guy held his own. He didn't always win, but he held his ground. And that's what Quinn needed to see. Joe Witt Jr., our defensive coordinator, developed a specific plan to maximize Igbinoghene's skills. His 4.48 speed in the 40 yards was still there. His SI X'1" height gave him an edge against smaller receivers. And his previous experience, although limited, had taught him to read routes better than when he came out of Auburn. During the 2024 season, Igbinoghene showed constant improvement. In the first 4 games, he allowed a passer rating of 98.5 when he was the nearest cornerback. But in the last 8 games of the season, that number dropped to 78.3. That's a massive improvement for a player many considered a complete bust. And here's what really convinced me that Igbinoghene had found his place. In the game against Dallas in Week 12, when he faced his former team, he had 6 tackles, 2 passes defended and limited. CeeDee Lamb to only 4 receptions on 8 targets. That game was a statement that this guy had reached another level. That's why, when we renewed his contract for a year this offseason, everyone thought it was a no-brainer decision. Only $1.5 million against the salary cap, with incentives that could take it to $2.8 million if he hit certain defensive benchmarks. It was a no-risk contract for a player who had shown growth. And during this training camp, Igbinoghene continued showing that improvement. He was working as the starting cornerback on the boundary opposite Marshon Lattimore. Practice reports talked about how he was winning more battles against our receivers, how his press coverage technique had improved, and how his pre-snap communication was much better. In preseason games, though he played mainly against second and third level receivers, Igbinoghene looked comfortable. He didn't allow any reception over 15 yards in man-to-man coverage. His tackling had dramatically improved in college. And his early pro years, he was always criticized for missed tackles. But this preseason, he didn't have a single one. And now Peters wants to trade him. They're crazy. Because I'm telling you this, our cornerback group was supposed to be one of our strengths this season. We have Marshon Lattimore, rookie Trey Amos, Mike St. Risto, and nickel veteran Jonathan Jones with 2 rings, and Igbinoghene completing the unit. But here's what really worries me. Do you remember Lattimore's injury history? This guy, as talented as he is, has had health issues his entire career. In 2023, with the Saints, he missed 7 games due to injuries. In 2022, it was 5 games. In his EIGHT-year career, he has only played a full 17-game season once. And Jonathan Jones' age? The man is 31 and entering his 10th year in the league. Although he had a solid season with the Patriots in 2024, the reality is that cornerbacks over 30 can decline quickly. Plus, Jones has never been a primary boundary cornerback. His specialty has been nickel and special teams. Now, if Igbinoghene gets injured or is unavailable, who are we going to trust? Trey Amos? He's a second-round rookie with potential, but asking him to be our CB2 from day one is a lot of pressure. Kerlin Vigers? Just got cut. Essang Bassey? Also cut on Monday. The depth behind our 5 main cornerbacks is concerning. And trading Igbinoghene, who only counts $1.5 million against our salary cap for what? A 5th-round pick? A depth linebacker? But I also understand Peters' perspective. Maybe he sees something we don't. Maybe there are concerns about Igbinoghene's ceiling. Perhaps he believes our rookies and veterans can handle the load. Or maybe, and this is what really has me thinking, Peters has already identified a cornerback available in the free agent market whom he prefers over Igbinoghene. Remember, Peters comes from San Francisco, where he worked with Lynch and Shanahan to build one of the deepest defenses in the NFL. He understands the importance of having multiple cornerbacks who can play different schemes. Perhaps he sees Igbinoghene as too limited for what he wants to do defensively. We also have to consider the financial aspect. Although $1.5 million isn't much money in the NFL context, every dollar counts when trying to maintain players like Terry McLaurin, Jaden Daniels in the future, and other core players. If Peters can get similar production for less money, it's a smart move. Now I ask you this. Do you think Peters knows something we don't? Because when Jerry Jones makes questionable moves with his cornerbacks, we laugh. But when Peters does something like this, I have to trust his vision. Although, honestly, this one has me puzzled. The reality is that Igbinoghene represents everything this organization needs: youth, growth potential, and hunger to prove he belongs at this level. At 25, he's entering his prime as a cornerback. Cornerbacks typically reach their best between the ages of 25 and 28, and we'd be trading Igbinoghene just when he could explode. But the story doesn't end there. Along with Hartman, Peters also cut several veteran defensive players many of us expected to stick around. And these cuts tell me a lot about the direction this defense is taking. Jalen Holmes and Clelin Ferrell were released, and here's where things get interesting. Holmes played 102 defensive snaps in the preseason, the second highest among our defensive linemen behind only the confirmed starters. Usually, when a veteran player plays this many snaps in the preseason, it means the coaching staff is seriously evaluating him for an important role. But Holmes finished with a grade of only 56.1, according to Pro Football Focus, which explains it all. Peters is not interested in keeping mediocre players, regardless of their experience or how many snaps they've played. Ferrell's story is even more interesting. This guy was a starter for us in 2024, playing in 14 games and accumulating 34 tackles and 3 sacks. The numbers weren't spectacular, but it was solid production for a rotational defensive end. He cost only $1.2 million against the cap this year, so it wasn't a financial issue. In the preseason, Farrell played 82 snaps and finished with a grade of just 46.3. 46.3. For a player of his experience, that's unacceptable. Peters clearly decided he preferred giving those snaps to younger players with more growth potential. Carl Davis, Andre Jones, and Khalil Vigers were also cut during the day. Davis was our depth nose tackle, Jones a developmental pass rusher, and Vigers a cornerback who showed flashes during camp. But here's what excites me about these cuts. Peters is prioritizing potential over experience. The players staying: T.J. Magaran-Yanga from the International Pathway Program, Sheldon Day as a productive veteran, are guys who have shown consistent improvement and have room to grow. Foster Sarell being cut also tells me something important about our offensive line. Sarell had been our depth swing tackle, but clearly the coaching staff prefers the current roster options or believes they can find better value in the free agent market. But here's where things get really crazy. While we cut K.J. Osborne, Michael Gallup, and Chris Moore, the free agent market is brimming with young, talented receivers that Peters could capitalize on right now. And before we talk about the available options, let's discuss why we had to make these cuts in the first place. K.J. Osborne came to us last year when Noah Brown got injured and we needed bodies at the position. Osborne had productive years in Minnesota, 1,845 yards and 15 touchdowns in 3 seasons as the Vikings WR3. But when he came to Washington, he never found his place in Kingsbury's offense. Only 12 receptions for 123 yards in the 6 games he played with us. Part of the problem was that he arrived late in the season and never fully learned the playbook. Part was that he simply didn't fit with the offensive style we wanted to implement. This year, we gave him another chance with a 1-year contract, hoping a full training camp would allow him to show his true potential. But with the addition of Deebo Samuel and the improvement of our rookies, there just wasn't enough room on the roster for Osborne. Michael Gallup was a signing that never made sense from the start. A 28-year-old veteran coming off 2 inconsistent years in Dallas, with an injury history offering nothing special in special teams. He was cut primarily for financial reasons. We freed up almost $20 million in cap space with his release. Chris Moore was our special teams ace, but at 30 and with younger options available, Peters decided it was time to go in a different direction. Now, let's talk about the available options, starting with the most intriguing one, Malachi Corley. Bargain of the century Malachi Corley from the Jets. And listen to me, this guy was selected in the 3rd round last year and already got cut. Do you know why? Because he doesn't fit into New York's new scheme with Aaron Rodgers and his preference for more traditional receivers. I interviewed Corley at the Senior Bowl last year, and he himself told me he could perfectly fit in that Deebo-type role that Cliff Kingsbury loves to use. And now that we have the real Deebo Samuel, imagine the possibilities of having TWO receivers with those characteristics on the field simultaneously. Corley is a monster after the catch. At Western Kentucky, he had 1,268 receiving yards and 14 touchdowns in his final season. But what really impressed was his ability to turn short receptions into big gains. His average yards after catch was an elite 8.3 yards per reception. At 5'11" and 210 pounds, he's perfectly sized to play from the slot, but can also align wide or even in the backfield as an occasional running back. In college, he had 47 carries for 417 rushing yards and 7 rushing touchdowns, showcasing his versatility. But here's what really excites me about potentially signing Corley. His play style is exactly what Kingsbury needs to maximize Jaden Daniels' potential. Corley is excellent at running routes from the slot, slants, hitches, comebacks, perfect for a young quarterback who needs quick and reliable options. At the Senior Bowl, Corley ran a 4.48 in the 40 yards and had a 37-inch vertical jump. Those are numbers of an elite athlete. His agility drills were also impressive, 6.75 in the 3-cone drill and 4 .18 in the 20-yard shuttle. Those numbers indicate he can create separation quickly in short spaces. The Jets cut him because Rodgers prefers receivers who can win one-on-one on vertical routes. Adams, Wilson, Lazard. But Corley was never that type of receiver. His value lies in his ability to create after the catch and his positional versatility. For us, he'd be perfect. Kingsbury could use him in motion, give him occasional handoffs, and create mismatches with linebackers and safeties in coverage. And best of all, he'd be practically FREE, only costing the rookie minimum. Trey Palmer, the explosive athlete Trey Palmer, was a victim of having the most wide-open receivers in the NFL in Tampa Bay, and the Buccaneers had to release him. He'll be a popular name on the waiver list, and it would be tough for him to reach the Commanders near the end of the claims order, but I have faith Peters could do something to get him. Palmer has a lot of talent any team can take advantage of, but his story is fascinating. He was originally a quarterback in high school before converting to receiver at Nebraska. That QB experience gives him a unique understanding of timing and spacing that many receivers don't have. At Nebraska, Palmer had 40 receptions for 554 yards and 5 touchdowns in his senior season. But those numbers don't tell the whole story. The Cornhuskers had a terrible offense that year, and Palmer constantly had to make adjustments on the fly to help his quarterbacks. He has always been an exceptional athlete with innate qualities that allowed him to quickly develop, and he developed well in the Bucs' offense during his limited time there. In the preseason with Tampa Bay, Palmer showed that great second gear that easily separates him in his routes. His athleticism also allows him to make high-level catches and be a real threat both in short game and deep pass receptions. At 6'1" and 204 pounds, he has the ideal frame for a boundary receiver, but he also has agility to play from the slot when needed. What I like about Palmer for our system is his ability to adjust routes mid-route based on coverage. That quarterback experience allows him to read defenses similarly to how a QB would, which is invaluable for a young quarterback like Daniels. In his pre-draft workouts, Palmer ran a 4.42 in the 40 yards and had a 10-foot 8-inch broad jump. His game speed also translates to the field. He has several 20-plus yard receptions in his limited NFL action. The problem for Palmer in Tampa Bay was simply numbers. With Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Russell Gage, and Trey Palmer competing for snaps, there wasn't enough opportunity for him to develop. But in Washington, with our thinner receiver group, Palmer could have an immediate role. Treshin Holden, the red zone threat like Ja'Cory Brooks, Treshin Holden was a popular undrafted rookie many teams were interested in during the draft. Holden is another younger player with a lot of potential, but the Dallas Cowboys also have a loaded WR room, and Holden was the odd man out, even after impressing during the training camp. His 6'3" and 210-pound stature makes him a true threat in the red zone, capable of catching any ball in the air with those massive hands. His 8 1-inch wingspan gives him a massive catching radius perfect for the fade. Roots and back shoulder throws Daniels showcased in college. The Commanders would love his run blocking, an underrated facet of his game. At Alabama, Holden was considered one of the best blocking receivers in college football. His willingness to block and technique allowed the Crimson Tide to run sweeps and outside zone plays consistently to his side. Holden could become a key piece for the offense, either on the active roster or the last open receiver in the practice squad with the potential to be elevated during the season. His skill set is exactly what we need to complement McLaurin. And, Samuel, what excites me about Holden is his football IQ. At Alabama, he played in one of the most complex college football systems under Nick Saban. His ability to memorize extensive route trees and make pre-snap adjustments will be invaluable in Kingsbury's system. In Dallas, training camp reports spoke of how Holden was constantly winning battles against veteran cornerbacks in practice. His route running had dramatically improved since college, and his chemistry with Dak Prescott in workouts was evident. The problem for Holden in Dallas was, again, the depth chart, with C.D. Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup. Before being cut, Jalen Tolbert, and others, there simply wasn't room for an undrafted rookie, no matter how talented. Other intriguing options on the market, but the options don't end there. The market is full of receivers who could help us immediately. Jalen Reagor, cut by the Patriots, a former first-round pick who never found his place in Philadelphia or Minnesota, but still has the athleticism to be productive in the right role. Kendall Fuller, although a cornerback, has played some snaps as a safety and could be a versatile option if Peters is looking for defensive backs who can play multiple positions. Ben Skowronek, cut by the Rams, is a solid possession receiver who was productive in Los Angeles before their depth chart filled up. The reality is, while the Eagles are still trying to keep their veteran receivers like Devonta Smith healthy after their injury concerns, and the Giants continue their usual limitations in their receiver room, we have the opportunity to fish in these waters and find the future of our position. Look, Commanders fans, I'm going to tell you exactly what I think of all this. Peters isn't playing games. Every move he's making has a specific purpose, and while some might confuse us at the moment, I trust his vision because he hasn't made any mistakes in his important decisions so far. Cutting Hartman? A clear message about standards? This isn't the same Washington of previous years where mediocrity was acceptable. If you can't perform when given the chance, no matter how good a teammate you are or how much potential you have, you're gone. Exploring the market with Igbinoghene? Possibly knows something we don't about his ceiling or has identified a better replacement. Peters comes from San Francisco, where they were constantly upgrading positions through smart trades. Taking advantage of the receiver market? That's the mindset of a GM always looking to improve and who understands talent evaluation doesn't. And in the draft, some of the best players in NFL history were undrafted or cut by other teams before finding their home. The difference between Peters and previous GMs we've had is he thinks multiple moves ahead. When he cuts a player, he already has 2 or 3 potential replacements identified. When he makes a trade, he knows exactly how he'll use the cap, space or draft capital he receives in return. After years of watching this organization make decisions that made no sense, keeping players past their prime, reaching for draft prospects, signing free agents that clearly didn't fit our system, we finally have someone who thinks 3 steps ahead. And you know what? That excites me immensely for this season and for the future of this franchise. The reality is Peters is building something sustainable here. He's not looking for quick fixes or trying to win now at the future's expense. He's building a foundation of young, hungry players who will grow with Jaden Daniels and form the core of this team for the next 5 to 7 years. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Peters should trade Igbinoghene or keep him as crucial depth? Which of these available receivers, Corley, Palmer, or Holden, do you think would best fit our attack and why? And do you completely agree with cutting Hartman right now? Or do you think we should have given him more time to develop? Leave me your comments below because I read every single one of them, and you always give me perspectives that make me think differently and sometimes challenge my own opinions in ways that help me be a better analyst. If you agree with Peters' decisions and believe he's building something special, give this video a like. If you think he's making mistakes or moving too fast, tell me in the comments with specifics on why. And if you want to continue being part of this burgundy and gold family, if you want to stay up to date with every move Peters makes during this crucial period, subscribe to the channel because tomorrow we'll have more explosive news about potential trades, and you can't miss what's coming in the next 48 hours. This community is becoming the most reliable source for Commanders news in Spanish, and you're a fundamental part of that. Together, we'll follow every step of this season that promises to be historic and every single move Peters makes to establish this franchise as a contender for many years. And remember, hail to the Redskins!